The Scindia case wasn't just another courtroom fight, it was a political chess move, a constitutional tug of war, and a dramatic moment in India's democratic evolution. At its heart, this case questioned something powerful. Can a government take back a promise it made at the birth of a nation just because the times have changed? And what happens when that promise involves money, power, and royalty? After independence in 1947, India didn't start off as one clean, unified country. Nearly half of India's landmass was made up of princely states, over 560 of them. These were ruled by kings, nawabs and maharajas who technically weren't under the British rule but were still controlled through treaties. When India became free, these rulers had three options: join India, join Pakistan, or stay independent. For the unity of India, it was absolutely essential that these states merged into the Indian Union. But there was one major hurdle. Why would a king give up his throne and join a democracy where he would just be another citizen? To solve this, the Indian government came up with a deal. The rulers would hand over their states, and in return, they would be allowed to keep their titles, some ceremonial privileges, and receive an annual payment from the government called the Privy Purse. Now, this wasn't just a casual arrangement, it was legally guaranteed under Article 291 of the Indian Constitution. Let's break that down. Article 291 said that the rulers of formerly princely states would be paid an annual amount from India's consolidated fund, basically the government's account that pays for everything from roads to salary. This amount was called the Privy Purse, and the article made sure it was a constitutional promise, not just a friendly handshake. So once this was written into the constitution, it just can't be taken away by change of mood or a new government. It needed proper constitutional amendment. Then came Article 366, Clause 22. This one is more technical. It simply defined who a ruler was. According to this article, a ruler was any prince or chief with whom the Indian government had signed a merger agreement and who was officially recognized by the president. So essentially, if the president recognized you were a ruler under the constitution and you got the benefits under Article 291, but by the 1970s, the public mood had shifted. The idea of a democratic India continuing to pay huge sums to the kings, some of them whom didn't even live in their former state, started to seem unfair. Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister at the time, saw an opportunity. Riding on a wave of socialism and equality, she pushed for the abolition of privy purses and the formal de-recognition of former rulers. In simple terms, end the payments, remove the royal status, and make everyone truly equal under the law. So she introduced a constitutional amendment bill to delete Articles 291 and 366 entirely. The Lok Sabha passed it smoothly, but when it reached the Rajya Sabha, something dramatic happened. It fell short by just one vote. The bill needed 150 votes to pass. It got 149. One vote and the entire plan collapsed. But the very next day, a controversial move took place. On September 6, 1970, the President of India issued an order de-recognizing all former rulers. Without going through Parliament, the government unilaterally cancelled their status. One of the rulers affected was Madhav Rao Scindia, the heir of the Gwalior royal family. He received an official order that said, with effect from today, His Highness Maharaja Dhiraja Madhav Rao Jivaji Rao Scindia ceases to be recognized as the ruler of Gwalior. This wasn't just symbolic. With that, he lost his title, his privileges, and most importantly, his privy purse. And he didn't take it lying down. Madhav Rao filed a case in the Supreme Court under Article 32, claiming that the President's order was unconstitutional and beyond the powers conferred by the Constitution. This brought about two major legal questions before the court. First, could the privy purse be considered as property under Article 19, Clause 1, Clause F, which gives citizens the right to acquire, hold, and dispose of property? And second, did the president have the legal authority to just de-recognize rulers by an order? The court analyzed this deeply. On the first point, it acknowledged that yes, the privy purse was a constitutional right and had characteristics of a property right. But it wasn't just any ordinary property, it was a part of a political settlement, and so unlike land or cash, it had a special status. The court made a key distinction. These weren't absolute property rights, but more like a social security guarantees, given in the larger interest of national integration. That meant they could potentially be modified, but not by bypassing the constitution. On the second and more crucial point, the court ruled in favor of Madhav Rao Scindia. It stated that Article 366, Clause 22 was just a definition, not a power-giving clause. The president could recognize a ruler under it, but he couldn't suddenly use it to withdraw that recognition unless the constitution allowed him to. The government's move, de-recognizing the rulers without passing the amendment, was declared unconstitutional. The judgment also clarified that Article 363, which prevents courts from interfering in disputes related to treaties or covenants with rulers, didn't apply here. This wasn't just about a private agreement, it was about whether the government had followed the constitution. So the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the rulers, the presidential order was struck down, and the privy purses and privileges were restored, but only for a while. Just months later, in 1971 elections, Indira Gandhi came back to power with a landslide majority. This time she had the numbers. Her government passed the 26th Constitutional Amendment Act in December 1971. This amendment abolished the privy purse system completely, deleted Article 291 and 366, added a new article, Article 363A, which officially removed the recognition of all former rulers. This time, the abolition was backed by the parliament and the constitution, making it immune from judicial challenge. The Scindia case left a lasting legacy. It clarified that governments can't override constitutional guarantees through shortcuts. It drew a clear line between social entitlements and enforceable rights. It also showed how political will, when backed by constitutional process, can reshape history. For the former royals, the change was both symbolic and financial. Some adapted by entering into politics, like Madhav Rao himself, who later became a senior Congress leader. Others turned into hospitality and business. A few struggled, and with the loss of state support, many grand palaces and cultural sites fell into neglect. Yet, in many ways, the abolition of privy purse marked a turning point. It was India's firm move away from feudal privilege and a reaffirmation of its commitment to constitutional equality. This case wasn't just about money or titles, it was about choosing between nostalgia and nation building. It was about how far a democracy is willing to go to honor its past and when it must finally let it go. And for more legal dramas, stay informed and stay empowered. Thank you.